Hi, my name is Kelly Bramblett, and I am the host of the Alchemy of the Phoenix podcast show, which is named after my debut book, The Alchemy of the Phoenix From the Ashes of Trauma to the Light of Love. My mission, passion, and purpose is to help spread a message of hope to the hopeless and inspire others to heal the collective by first healing themselves. I am a trauma support specialist using my knowledge to support and guide my clients to healing, which I do through my one-on-one trauma recovery, mindset, and shadow work coaching programs. In addition to this, I'm a two-time best-selling author and spiritual mentor who has had the profound honor of working with people worldwide, helping them to live their best, most joyous, and fulfilling lives. You can learn more about my books, my programs, and my services by visiting my website at www.kellybramblett.com. So without any further ado, let's jump into this Alchemy of the Phoenix podcast episode. Hello and welcome to the newest episode of the Alchemy of the Phoenix podcast. I have been talking in the previous episode about the Akashic Records, really getting into what the records are and what information is stored in those records. So if you aren't familiar with the Akashic Records, you're going to want to put a pause in this episode, go back to the previous episode and listen to that one first. It's, I think, 10-15 minutes. It's really short, and it's going to clear up any questions you have around what the Akashic Records are. I'm going to be talking to you about the healing we can do within the Akashic Records. So, a little bit of backstory. I have been very familiar with the Akashic Records for quite some time. I've always been someone to go and get Akashic Record readings. I usually get at least one or two a year, and then some additional readings if like something shows up. So naturally, I began being inspired to learn how to open the records for myself. And I ended up taking a certification class so I could learn. So I'm officially a certified Akashic Records reader, which has been really, really exciting. I have been giving these sessions. They've been powerful. They've been amazing. I've been loving it. But I certified about 3 months ago or so, I would say, and started opening my records. Then I started practicing. Then I started offering free sessions to get even more practice. And then people started coming to me and saying, no, I actually want to pay you for this. So then I was like, well, hello, universe, I'm listening. I started charging a little while soft launch, and I'm getting ready to hard launch this amazing service. But in this, I've really looked at like, how do I want to approach this? Because there's a million people doing Akashic readings out there. I mean, there's no shortage of readers, right? But for me, I've always been drawn more to the healing aspects of the work that I do. What do I mean when I say that? Well, I'm a shadow work expert and a trauma recovery expert. I write books on trauma recovery. I write books on shadow work. I guide my clients through these processes. And so I'm very much in this like healing trauma realm, healing the subconscious, uncovering the subconscious realm that we get into when we start doing our shadow work. What I have found is that when I'm going into the Akashic Records, this is all woven in, right, to the sessions. I don't even call them the sessions that I'm doing. I don't even call them Akashic Record readings because there's so much more. We do so much healing within the records. I've done soul retrieval, cord cutting, meditative processes, and other rituals to actually like bring forth like this deep cellular healing that happens or that's available to us. So let me not get ahead of myself though. I'm going to just kind of rewind here because you might be wondering, what are you talking about? And I'm going to explain it all. Don't worry. So I'm going to rewind a little. So when I am doing my coaching work, which I do within 3-month containers usually, and there's a reason for that, because when we're talking about trauma recovery, when we're talking about working with the subconscious mind, you can't do that in an hour or 90 minutes. Get real. This takes time. It's like an onion. You peel back one layer and there's more revealed, and you peel back that layer and there's more revealed. So things like shadow work, uncovering the subconscious mind. And for anyone who's not familiar, shadow work is really just inner work, but it's inner work that's focused around the subconscious. So it's really, really fascinating. We have on average about 60 to 70 thoughts per day. And with the 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day that we have on average, we're repeating a huge percentage. I think up to 75% of these thoughts are on repeat. Now, I'm not trying to throw too many numbers at you, but in that 70,000 thoughts, let's just say that we're having, again, 75% of these are being repeated, and 95% of all of these thoughts are happening on a subconscious level. So basically, to simplify this, we are thinking the same things over and over and over without even being aware of what it is we're thinking. But it's this 95% of thought that's happening on a subconscious level that is driving our behaviors, our cycles, and all of these things that are creating our reality. So you can see why shadow work is, honestly, in my opinion, the most important work we can do. It's all tied into the trauma recovery, because a lot of the trauma we experienced, we created stories around that are being held in the subconscious that are now manifesting as chaos, dissatisfaction, apathy, all of these different kind of things that, to me, I refer to as chaos in our lives. It's to our great benefit to have a deeper understanding and awareness around what's happening on a subconscious level, because then we step into an empowerment place, an empowered space to rewrite old narratives, to be more serving, and train the brain, rewire the brain to work for us instead of against us, so that we begin to essentially create and live the realities that we desire. Never in a million years did I think I would be on this woo-woo side of things. Now, I personally am a very spiritual person, and I can get pretty woo-ish. But in my work, up until recently, it's always been really important to me to address these things from this logical and scientifically backed way of doing inner work and shadow work through processes and all of these different types of things, the tools that we have. And I stand by this work. I still stand by it. We need to be doing our shadow work. But what I have found that makes healing within the Akashic Records so powerful, and when I say powerful, like, that's a word that gets thrown around so much, but I really mean like deeply impactful and instantly impactful, is because we are really able to collapse time within the records. So let me talk a little bit about what I mean when I say collapse time. When we are going through these shadow work processes, when we're doing our shadow work journey, like I really talked to you guys about previously when I was going into shadow work, this all takes time. This is why I only have 3-month containers minimum, because we just can't do it in a short time. So we first have to go through a series of processes to first gain awareness, because, as I said, 95% of these things are happening beyond your awareness. So the first step in shadow work and even trauma healing is first awareness. And that takes a series of steps, because obviously, if we already had the awareness, then it wouldn't be in the subconscious. So we have to utilize certain tools that I share with my clients to help bring what is hidden in the subconscious to the conscious. Okay. So there's tools that we can use and methods that I share with my clients to help guide them through the first process, which is awareness. Where awareness is one of the biggest steps we need to take, because without awareness, we don't know where to begin anything else. Awareness leads us to the root cause of our behaviors. Awareness leads us to where we're storing our trauma. Awareness leads us to when trauma was first created and what the impact of that has been on our current reality. Awareness is everything. It's where it's at. And so awareness is step one, albeit a big step though, a big step one. And then once we gain this awareness through several weeks and even months of uncovering through these processes, okay, so now we have the information. So now we have to really integrate and embody it in our lives. And then that requires now a whole other toolbox of tools and methods that help us to anchor what we've learned into the actual biological brain. And I don't want to digress too much here. I've talked a lot about this in my other work about like how the bio brain works, but a very short version of this is, if you've been telling an unhelpful narrative in the subconscious mind for 10 years, let's say, you've carved very deep neural pathways in the brain, and the brain is always going to take the path of least resistance, because if the brain is nothing else, it is a machine basically of efficiency. It's a biological computing machine, and therefore it's always going to be looking for the most efficient way. The brain is always looking to save energy. And therefore, if we have these nice neural pathways that are making it easy for these neural connections to happen, the brain is automatically going to take that pathway. And we create these pathways through our thoughts. We biologically change our brain on a cellular level through our thoughts. So let that sink in first. So we can gain the awareness now of the thoughts that we've been having. Let's say we've been having it for 10 years. I'm just throwing that number out. So we gain the awareness around it. That's wonderful. But the brain is going to continue to operate in the same way until we direct it and teach it to operate in a new way. So we do that through a whole other series of techniques and tools where we rewire the biological brain. We create a new path of least resistance. We're creating new neural pathways through this neuroplasty that we have. And we are training the brain how we want the brain to think. We're training the brain to work for us instead of against us. And all of this takes time. This can take months. This can even take years, depending on how deep those neural pathways we've already created are. So it takes a lot of time. And it's well worth the time. But what I have been finding is that when we go into the Akashic Records, we can bypass so much of this time. So let's start with the awareness piece. We can go into the Akashic Records, and let's just say someone has a habit of blackout drinking every single weekend, and they're spending too much money, and they feel like crap all during the week, and they're doing things that are outside of their integral belief system, why they're intoxicated. They might even be getting DUIs. They're not performing well at work. Just like all the things that result from someone who's living this low vibrational frequency of like blackout drinking, problematic drinking. And they recognize that it's a problem, but they just don't have the awareness. Like, why? When did this start? What am I running for? What am I not seeing? Right? Like, what's driving this behavior that's not serving me, that's creating all the chaos? So you can go through all these steps, which I do in my coaching containers, and we can figure that out together, and then I'll work you through it. Or you can go into the Akashic Records and simply ask, what am I not seeing that's driving this unhelpful behavior? And instead of it taking weeks, months, or even years to get to the root cause of something, years to get to the root cause actually rarely happens, but it can take weeks for sure, and definitely months. So instead of having to take that time to even gain the awareness within an hour or 90-minute session, you've already bypassed months of work in just getting to the awareness piece. So let's go to that second part that I talked about when we're doing shadow work and healing. So we have the awareness. Great. What do I do with it? Well, that's when we go into that retraining of the brain, right? We have to retrain the brain. What I have found is that once I'm given information, and once my clients are given information within the Akashic Records, the brain accepts it instantly as truth. I can only speculate that things are changing at a cellular level in the brain when this happens to create this on a biological level. We biologically are always going to be mirroring what's happening spiritually around us and within us. And I mean, I don't have any scientific proof to back this up, but I just have to say logic says that there's something being rewired on a biological and cellular level within the brain and body. Instead of it taking weeks and months to rewrite a story. And this is where it can take years, because some stories, if we've been telling them for a very long time, or there's a lot of traumatic emotion around that story, it might take us years to stop telling that story. No matter how hard we're working on it, we just keep coming back. We keep coming back to the new story, but that old story is going to keep making an appearance for a really long time. What I have found in the records is that once we receive information and it's resonant on this like soul deep level of like, yeah, it's like a remembrance rather than being given information like, oh yeah, I remember this now. My soul recognizes this as truth. My soul remembers this as truth. Once we receive that, the brain follows suit and accepts this information, and we can bypass these sometimes years of work that we have to do to rewire the biological brain around our traumas and our setbacks and our limiting beliefs and the things that are blocking us from our desires. And that is deeply powerful. So I've always said, like, I hold my shadow work containers at 3 months minimum because we can't do this work in just an hour and a half. But the Akashic Records are teaching me that we can do a lot of work actually and a lot of healing in a 90-minute session, because it is collapsing time, because we are doing work from a soul level rather than doing soul work from a physical level, if that makes sense at all. And I hope that that's coming across the way I mean it. So that has been mind blowing. And definitely you're going to see this woven into all aspects of my work, because why wouldn't it be? After I've seen how powerful it is, like, why wouldn't I just naturally begin to weave this in? Despite my fears of maybe not being taken as seriously. And that, I think, is something I've really had to look at. Like, in my personal life, I am as woo as you get. I do rituals. I'm always looking up different animals that are showing up. Like, I'm all about the energetics. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I work in energy. I move in energy in my personal life. But deep down, I think there's been a subconscious fear that I would be not taken seriously in my work if I brought too much of this wooishness into my work. And especially when it comes to my trauma recovery work, especially when it comes to my shadow work. And I've always really approached this work from the newest scientific information that we're being given on trauma healing and shadow work. And I'm having to break free from that. I'm having to free myself from that constraint. And the craziest thing is like I said, I am booking more work now before I've even launched this program, before I've even hard launched this service, because I think I'm not limiting myself any longer. I'm not being limited by fear. I'm just allowing it to come and realizing that I believe in this 100%, and those who this will truly benefit are going to feel called to it regardless. So that's just a little insight into kind of what I've been going through as I've been opening these doors. Another really cool aspect that I want to touch on about the Akashic Records that we can utilize to our benefit when it comes to healing is we can break and negotiate contracts. So what am I talking about? Soul contracts. If you are not familiar with soul contracts, definitely pause this, rewind, go through my episodes. I've talked a lot about soul contracts, but I do have some episodes that are specifically just about soul contracts where I'm going to go into detail explaining what that means. So if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about when I talk about soul contracts, go ahead and have a listen to that first and then jump back into this, and it's going to make a lot more sense. I'm going to do a third episode soon, based on the Akashic Records, where I talk about like kind of the neat little things I've learned within the records that have been surprising or that I didn't expect. But for now, I'm just kind of talking about healing. But I bring that up because this idea of negotiating and breaking oaths and contracts has been something I've learned in the records. And I've also been shown like how we make these contracts. And I've been told basically that we create soul contracts and oaths in two ways. So we create soul contracts in spirit form with our team of light before we come to this 3D earthly experience. So depending on what we feel like we need to learn, depending on any karmic debt that we've accumulated, or karmic debt that we've accumulated, karmic ties we've created, all of this is taken into account, and we agree to certain experiences that we want to have in physical form to help the soul to expand in some way, to understand something in some way, or to pay back karmic debt, whatever that is. Whatever it is for each individual, we all have kind of a mixture of all of these things. So we create these contracts and we come down, and with these soul contracts, they must be fulfilled basically, because they were created from a soul space. They must be fulfilled. But we have free will as human beings. We have free will even as spirit beings. So our free will means that some people are going to come to this earth and choose to not fulfill specific contracts during that lifetime, which is fine. We can choose to do that. But what that means is that we're going to come back in another life and be presented with the same experiences that are going to help us to fulfill that contract. And we will continue until that contract is fulfilled. And it's up to us. We can do it in one life or we can spend it over 100. It really depends on what we choose through our free will and where we are in the evolutionary process of mixing that with the spirit evolution with this physical evolution. Okay, so we form these contracts, just to recap, in spirit form. And these are things that our soul is pretty much held to, whether we choose to fulfill it or not. We're going to keep being presented with it until we do basically master the lessons, fulfill the contract. So that's the first way. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself in explaining this. The second way, we create oaths and contracts. And oaths really are only created in physical being form. So when we're here on earth, when we're creating them from this physical place, we can also create contracts. So a really good example of this is, in a past life, I was in a position of leadership. I was like the sailor on this merchant ship, and I transported people back and forth. Like, I helped people, basically settlers, get to new places, and I took people places. I was a merchant captain of the ship, basically, but I specifically worked in transportation of people from one place to the other. And something went very awry on one of these journeys, and we got off track. A storm threw us off track for some time, and we only had enough supplies for a certain amount of days, and we started running out of supplies. There were women, there were children on this boat. And it's crazy because my soul knows the story. It gets me a little emotional, and it's not even something I experienced in this lifetime, but this is how much of an impact this had on my soul and spirit. Well, basically, a lot of these people suffered because we didn't have what we needed. And I watched a lot of people starve to death because we only had so many resources. And I watched a lot of children starve to death. I watched a lot of women starve to death. I was a male, and in this life, I carried so much guilt and so much responsibility for what had happened and for the loss of life. And it impacted me on such a level. And I made an oath or a contract that I would never stand in a position of leadership again. This was made from a highly emotionally charged physical state. And that's what gives it power. So when we connect these really highly charged emotions to our words, we create pacts, we create oaths, we create contracts. It has to have that emotional drive to it, though. So we can't just like randomly, like with no emotion behind something, just spit out some words. And it's not enough. That's why when we're talking about law of attraction and manifesting, we have to have the emotionality behind it to actually manifest what we want. It goes so much beyond just our words, but that's for a different podcast episode altogether. So anyways, I took this vow that I would never stand in a position of leadership. So imagine in this life, when I started running my business many, many years ago, and I was trying to establish myself as a leader and an expert in my field, imagine how many blocks were being created for me. I knew the information was good. I knew what I was sharing was powerful. I knew that I was being called to do this. And yet it just felt like, first of all, I wasn't able to embody the role. I constantly felt like I was an imposter. I had really bad imposter syndrome. I was always worried that people were judging me, thinking that I wasn't someone who should be doing this, that I wasn't someone who should be trying to step into a leadership and a role. And it was all holding me back, long story short. So being able to look at that oath I made, which I didn't even break this oath in the Akashic Records. I just started working on this a long time ago when I received this information and shifted it slowly but surely over time. But again, that's how we collapse time, is because we can go into the Akashic Records, and with the help of our spirit team within the records, they're going to basically provide the energetic charge that we need to effectively shift something. It's like I was telling someone in a class that I was teaching today. We have to break an oath with the same energetic charge that we created it with. So we can ask our team of light within the records to help create that energetic charge, basically to break oaths and contracts that are no longer serving us. However, we can only break oaths and contracts within the records, or outside of the records even, that we created in the physical form. Okay, because those are always created from ego, basically. Ego is just our human aspect, to put it in the most simplistic way. And they're usually oaths and contracts we make from a highly emotionally charged space. Not usually, always. Okay. So we can break those because those are rarely serving to us. Not always not serving. Sometimes we can get really emotionally lit up about something positive and step into a place of empowerment, which is great. But more times than not, it's these heavier emotions that we attach to situations, and then we create these highly charged emotional packs, and those an indention, for no better word. Indention's not the best word, but like an energetic stamp on our Akashic records. They get sealed in energetically. We give it our stamp through that energetic charge. So we can just break these. I dissolve them. I burn them into a flame of violet flame of electric violet light, and send these up to be just out of my field, up and away, basically, from me. And we can do that within the records. Now, when it comes to contracts that we've created and decided upon in spirit form, it gets a little trickier, because when we are creating from spirit before we come here, there's a reason why. It's not necessarily, or it's not ever, I should say, emotionally charged. That's not how it works in spirit. It's contracts created that are going to help whatever our evolutionary goals are as a soul, basically. Or in simpler terms, it's going to support the lessons we feel like we need to learn. So if we need to learn, I'm just going to throw some examples. If we want to learn a lesson around healing abandonment, which ultimately is a lesson in unconditional self-love and acceptance when we really get to the root of that. But let's just say we need to learn this lesson that ultimately leads us to that unconditional love, because every lesson is always leading us back to love. Every lesson leads us back to love. Because when we get led back to love, we're being led back to our truest selves, because we are love and our highest vibrational frequency of self, our highest self. So it always leads back to love. So let's say that our soul is like, this is what we are going to learn, or I'm just going to keep it simple. So yes, we came here to learn this lesson of abandonment. Well, in order to learn that, unfortunately, we're going to have to go through an experience of abandonment. So we might make a contract with somebody else in our life. Maybe it's someone who's going to come in as a parent or a lover, and as hard as it is, teach us this very painful lesson by abandoning us in some way. And through that wounding, we then have to heal. We're then called to healing. And again, this is how we may not fulfill every contract in every life. So we have this contract of abandonment, let's say, and we go through this really painful experience of being abandoned. Well, we can then heal from that, or we can wallow in that, and we can let it pull us down, and we can let it create all kinds of stories about ourselves and others that aren't serving, and we can live our whole life with that story. But then we're going to come back in the next life and we're going to experience abandonment again, and we're going to keep experiencing abandonment until we finally, once and for all, heal the abandonment wound that was created, and the soul learns those lessons around abandonment that ultimately leads us back to love. So that's how these contracts work. But let's say you go into your records and we are able to be shown this contract of suffering. I've seen contracts of poverty, contracts of suffering, all kinds of contracts, but this one is a contract of abandonment. Okay. So we're able to identify that. We're able to gain clarity. So we can't break that contract, because we're trying to break it from a vibrational frequency that we weren't in when it was created. So our highest self always knows best, right? But we don't want to go through the pain of abandonment, maybe. We can negotiate our contract with our team of light in the Akashic Records and say, okay, like, I recognize that I'm here to basically learn this lesson of radical self-acceptance and love through abandonment. And now that I see that with clarity, let me instead just work on radical self-love and radical self-acceptance. And we can negotiate these terms of our contract. So as long as we're negotiating the outcome in a way that allows the soul to still learn the lesson, we can then, bypass the painful experience that we felt we needed to have to learn the lesson. Hopefully, I'm explaining this well. I know this gets really heady. That's the nature of the Akashic Records. That's the nature of the spirit. It's not logical. It is definitely energetics, and it's all about the energetics. So yeah, this stuff does get pretty heady. But those are contracts we can definitely negotiate. So we can't break them, but we can change the terms of them if we can basically prove and show that we're able to learn this lesson in another way, or that we're going to learn it another way, or to basically commit to learning it in a less painful way. So these are just some of the things, the ways. So these are just some of the ways that I have found the Akashic Records to be deeply, deeply healing. And I was just about to actually end this episode, and something came through for me that I want to share before I go that also has to do with healing in the Akashic Records, is we can actually also receive beautiful, beautiful energetic healing within the records. So I have gone into the records and had my team of light literally put hands on me and give me energetic healing sessions, or work with me on cutting cords, showing me where I have cords that need to be cut, and working with me on cutting those energetic connections. And we can work with our guides within the records to retrieve shattered or fragmented parts of the soul that have been created through trauma, to call all that energy back to us, to call all parts of ourselves back to us. We can write new contracts with the charge of our team of light behind us within the records. We can just simply receive Reiki energy. We can have them clear our chakras. And really, like with all things with spirit, it's limitless. What we can do is truly, truly, truly limitless within the records. And I feel like the possibilities for healing within the records are just as limitless. I hope this has been as fascinating for you as it has been for me, as I have been learning all about this stuff by opening the records, going into the records, and sitting in council with my team of light. I don't know where this is going to take me. I have no freaking idea. I'm here for it though. I am following the flow. I'm following the calling, and I'm really like lit up by this, which is how I know this, I'm on the right path. This is all good. This is great. So if you're listening to this and you're like, this sounds amazing, yes, reach out to me. I'm going to try to put in the show notes. Hopefully, like I said, this platform has changed. I'm still learning it, but I think I can still add in the show notes a link where you can book in a one-on-one session with me, and we can look at all these things and we can do this deeper work within your records. It's always such an honor to sit in this space with others. And if you want to check out some of the reviews I've been getting from people who have already been working with me, check out the show notes. I'm going to put a link to those reviews because I've been getting fabulous feedback. It's been amazing. So I would love, love, love if you feel called to this, to hold this space for you and to guide you through your own Akashic Records. So click that link below, get booked in. These sessions are booking really fast. So if you want to see me sooner than later, I recommend getting in ASAP. So this is all I got for you today in this episode. Like I said, I'm going to be coming in hot with a third at some point, where I'm going to be talking about all the cool little things I've learned within the Akashic Records that I did not expect, that have surprised me like so much. So I'll be coming through with that episode for you. But for now, here's 2 episodes to get you started in what I feel like is going to eventually become a series. So I hope that this has served you, sparked something within you, sparked your interest. And again, if it sparked a knowingness, I can't wait to sit with you. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I pray that everyone listening to this just receives blessings in abundance. I love you all so much. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.